Realty.
Where do you go for mobility equipment? Ostomy supplies, respiratory products, exercise equipment. Where do you go? To the name you know, Hammer. For all your home health care needs, it's Hammer Medical Supply. And Hammer bills Medicare and insurance companies for you, too. Hammer Medical Supply, your complete home health care headquarters. Hammer, Des Moines, Newton, and Oskaloosa.
From Washington, Roland Evans and Robert Novak bring you the people who are the news on Evans and Novak.
I'm Roland Evans. Robert Novak and I will question one of America's most innovative and most colorful businessmen.
He is Texas billionaire H. Ross Perot. He made his fortune with his Dallas-based computer company, EDS. But Perot's fame came in 1979 when he arranged the rescue of 2 employees from an Iranian prison. Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North put him in the news again when it was learned that Perot, over the past 5 years, repeatedly agreed to North's requests for ransom money for Americans held hostage in Lebanon. 2 years ago, General Motors, seeking more automation, bought EDS from Perot. But last December, GM kicked Perot off its board of directors and stripped him of his EDS chairmanship, in compensation for which it paid him a cool $700 million.
What I said was the deteriorating relationship was Mr. Perot's unaccountability to anybody, including the board of directors.
Getting General Motors competitive is like teaching an elephant to tap dance. First thing you've got to do is find out where the elephant is sensitive. I think I have found where the elephant is sensitive.
The GM-Perot breakup came as big business is labeled a corpocracy, bloated, inefficient, unimaginative. Mr. Perot, do you think that those accusations are correct, that American business is unable to compete in the world today because it is inefficient and bloated?
Well, there are a number of reasons. It varies from company to company. It's hard to generalize, and it's sort of like a medical problem. You need a specific diagnosis and treatment for each case.
We'll be back in a moment with more questions for Mr. Perot after these messages.
Of all the new cars sold in the U.S., the number 1 trouble-free car was a Toyota. The number 2 a Toyota. Number 3, 4, in fact 6 of the top 10 were Toyotas. Presenting the 1987 Toyotas: Camry, Cressida, Tercel, Corolla, Celica, Toyota Supra. With more of the quality that's made Toyotas the most trouble-free new cars sold. Who could ask for anything more?
She's the mystery.
I don't care where you come from. Alaska will get you.
Alaska is the story that my father told of swift rivers running with salmon and gold. Alaska is so many things I have never known. Alaska is the warming sun calling me home. Alaska.
Where will you be when your laxative starts working? Where will you be? With Fleet brand glycerin suppositories, there's no worry. Fleet works when you want it to, in minutes. For fast, predictable relief, trust Fleet. It's predictable.
I put in a tough workout nearly every day. That's why I clean my clothes gently with Woolite Fine Fabric Wash. Gentleness is more important with frequent cleaning. So if I'm going to stay in shape, I think my clothes should too. I trust Woolite.
American Heritage has been called the world's greatest magazine of history. To me, it's our American Family album, the story of our own past brought gloriously to life.
Get American Heritage for you and your family. Get a full year, 6 big bi-monthly issues for only $18. Save 25% off the cover price. Order now and get this hardbound, concise family edition of the American Heritage Dictionary. Free. Call 1-800-257-1257.
Billionaire businessman Ross Perot. We're going to get back to a discussion of corpocracy in a second, but I want to ask you first about hostages. Do you think ransom should be paid or should not be paid for American hostages?
Well, you know, there's a high philosophical level where you can get pretty esoteric, which is what we tend to do in postmortems in this country. But when you find some poor devil that's bound and gagged, being kept in a closet, so on and so forth, you develop great concern for him, great sympathy for him. 4 presidents have asked me to respond to Americans in distress. There's an interesting story here in that I've been doing this since 1969. The press has known that I've been doing this since 1969. Nobody ever even wrote a story about it. Nobody ever asked me a question about it. And anytime, excuse me, they asked questions, but they never got in print or on tape.
Yeah.
And then finally, when Ollie North is in the news, it's big news. Now, that's the American way, and that's fine.
Ross Perot,
but there's nothing new in this story at all.
You have the, perhaps the best record on the hostage issue of anybody in this country, perhaps in the Western world. Do you think President Reagan was correct? Do you think the White House and the NSC staff were correct in sending arms to bribe, I will use that word, Iran, to influence the Shiites in Lebanon to let our hostages go? Right or wrong?
Well, I can't understand it, unless there's something that I don't know. Say, for example, if you'd have called me in September and said, Ross, I'll make you a big bet that we're shipping arms to Iran, and I said, who? And you said, our government. And I said, well, no, you set the terms, I'll make the bet. And he'd say, well, beyond that, we're shipping sophisticated things like tow missiles. I said, well, I'll give you 10 to 1's odds. I would have felt that strongly that we weren't doing it. So, obviously now, we were doing it. I don't understand it. It's easy to second-guess the guys who are trying to get the job done. All I can say is at this point, I don't understand why they were doing it.
Well, you got your men, Mr. Perot, your own employees, at least 2 of them, there were 2, out of a jail in Tehran in 1978. Do you think that Americans now should not be allowed to travel in the Middle East in areas where they might be taken hostage? And if so, should that apply to Bonn, Germany, and Paris, France?
I think good judgment would dictate that people not be in that part of the world. The minute I got my people out of the Middle East, I declared that we would not go back into that part of the world, and we would not go into any part of the world where our people would be put in serious jeopardy. Now then, in terms of going into Germany, going into Paris, wherever the terrorists operate, pretty soon you wouldn't come out of the house if you followed it to that extreme. But people who choose to stay in Lebanon do it at great personal risk. Then you could say, well, then why in the world should the government or people like me be concerned about them after they make that serious judgment error? Well, that's as basic as our culture in this country. Once the poor devil is captured, I've never known a president that didn't have intense concern about Americans in distress. And you have to respond in unconventional ways. We'd like to have the rest of the world have our legal system, our system of justice, and our philosophical and cultural systems. They don't. In the Middle East, this is eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth country. And when you're trying to get something done over there, you've got to do things in an unconventional way, and that would include paying for information, paying ransom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, Mr. Perot, when you said you were surprised about the arms going over to Iran, you implied that you think there was an incorrect decision to send arms to the Iranians. Is that correct? Do I infer correctly?
So what I tried to say is that I don't know the reasoning that would have caused it to make sense. If there is such reasoning, I have not been privy to it.
But you do feel that, of course, you did when Colonel North asked you if you would help contribute ransom money, and these deals, let me make clear, never were culminated, but you felt that that was certainly a proper course for the government to be following to pay ransom money.
Well, by the time North got there, I'd been pretty well programmed through 3 prior presidents to get calls in the middle of the night from time to time, an emergency, a need. My sense always is that the National Security Council was made up of people who were carefully selected. It was a tightly controlled operation. It was run right out of the White House. I never had any sense at all that you had cowboys, loose cannons, all these things you read about today.
And you assume Colonel North
And I assumed that everybody was operating under carefully thought-out instructions and in the best interest of the country. Now, in retrospect, people say, well, did you take them down a list of 50 questions each time they called you? No, I didn't. There wasn't time for that. There was only time for a yes or no. Well, the classic case is when they called me on Colonel Dozier, 3 o'clock in the morning, said that there was no way in the United States government that they could get money that they needed, and wondered if I could produce $500,000 in lira in the U.S. Embassy in an hour at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Let me bring this up with one more.
See, now, you don't have time to say, all right, now then, let's go through our due diligence. I'll have my lawyers meet with you. You see what I mean?
I
You either do it or you don't do it.
Let me ask you.
I felt like if there was any way to save Colonel Dozier, it was worth a try, and we tried.
Let me bring this up to the President. One last question on this subject, sir. Right now we have 4 American professors, 3 Americans and 1 Indian professor, being talked about being exchanged for several hundred Arabs being held by the Israelis. Do you think that's a good swap? Would you think that would be a good way to go?
The Israelis, I believe, check me on this, have a history of being willing to make one-sided exchanges in terms of numbers for an Israeli soldier. In this case, I think the key character is the Israeli pilot that was shot down and captured. I believe that's a strong piece of what drives this. Based on reading the newspapers and watching television, my sense is that they are asking, Israel is saying, we need a formal request to do this from the United States. I believe, though, under the covers, the thing that drives and motivates all this is the recovery of their airmen. They have a long history of making one-sided swaps to get their people back. Have a great record of recovering their military men.
Mr. Ross Perot, let's go back to topic A right now, and that is the corpocracy of, as it's been described by a very high official in the U.S. government that now runs American business, or that now describes American business. You said once that General Motors has failed to make the best use of its people. They just fired you, in effect.
Well, no, you're wrong there.
Right, sir? Tell me where I'm wrong.
Let's get that straight right now. All of the outside board members in General Motors own 13,000 shares. That tells you something right there. But all of them added together own 13,800 shares. I had 2.8 million General Motors votes. These characters were not in a position to fire me. Nobody fired me.
Why didn't you fight him?
I won't try to explain it. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish up.
You're on the program. I just answered your question. No, go ahead.
Why didn't you fight him, Mr. Perot?
I did. I am.
You are now. Explain what you mean.
Of course, this is all very fascinating to me, because if you follow what happened, they suddenly decided they wanted to buy me out. There were 2 great stress points. I was pushing them to get competitive. I was pushing them to live up to their agreements to the EDS stockholders made at the time of purchase. I had told them openly and repeatedly that as far as I was concerned, they were guilty of violating security laws unless they did that. They knew that I was headed straight into a series of legal actions to force them to do that. They had resisted doing that for 2 years. I had pushed hard as a director to get General Motors competitive. I had pushed them hard to make the best use of their resources. They have their way, their system. They were resisting it. General Motors, since the current management team's been in place, has spent $45 billion on capital improvements, lost market share. Now, to help you put that in perspective, for $35 billion, you could buy Toyota and Nissan and double their market share. That shows you what's happening in General Motors today. You look at the quality of the cars, you look at the cost competitiveness. Now, then you turn around and look at the company. General Motors has more of everything than any other car maker in the world. It's a tragedy that we're not first and best at everything. I couldn't stand to be part of something that wasn't first and best at everything.
So what you're saying, as I understand it, Mr. Perot, is that the problem the American automobile industry has been having with Japan is strictly indigenous here at the heart of the industry. It is not a question of unfair trading practices. It is the GM, of which you are the largest single stockholder. The GM simply cannot make its own system work in a competitive way. That's what you're saying.
Well, as American companies grow and mature, and as the people who found them, who typically have a great sensitivity toward the customer, a great pride in the quality of the product, a great concern for the people in the companies, are replaced by the so-called professional managers, you get a whole new mindset, a whole new ethic, and a whole new set of priorities. In many of our big companies, we rear our young people through the ranks to follow procedures. The procedures that are developed over time have nothing to do with results of superior products, competitive prices. Finally, one of them, after 35 or 40 years, gets to the top and has to get results. Nothing in that 35-year period has prepared him to run the company and get results.
What's the answer to this?
So he becomes a custodian for 4 or 5 years until he retires. The motto becomes steady as you go, pass it on. Typically, from time to time, they run a big PR campaign. I was pressing them to do the fundamentals. Now, the good news is, most of the things that I was pressing so hard for, they are starting to do. They're starting to talk to their stockholders. They're starting to listen to the dealers. They are starting to do many of these things that, when I was urging them to do it, were considered strange, unconventional, so on and so forth. So these are fundamental things you have to do to get competitive.
Well, I want to just get it straight, Mr. Perot. Why did you leave the board of directors?
Well, they showed up suddenly with this opportunity to buy me out, just at a time when they were closing plants, laying off 30,000 people. They brought this idea to me through my lawyer. I told him, I said, this will never happen, but get something in writing. I want to show the world someday where these people's priorities are in a time of crisis. He came back with a pretty solid document. And I said, this is unbelievable, but the board of directors will never approve it. Now then, insert all these things in it, that I want a giant premium for my stock, that I want the right to hire the top 200 people from EDS, I want the right to start a new EDS, and on and on and on and on. They won't agree to that, and it'll go away. They came back and agreed to all that. From a business point of view, the document is a disaster for General Motors. From a self-interest point of view, it's very tight. I'm not supposed to criticize General Motors. I'm not supposed to try to take over General Motors. These are the things that drove the management.
But you are criticizing General Motors.
Only constructively.
Now, let me just
but that's not the point. Now then, let me finish. You guys always stop me. You're saying, why did I do it? Then I said, okay, no board of directors would ever buy a document like this. One of the stipulations, now follow this one here, one of the stipulations is that I, the largest director, would not attend the board meeting where this was considered, so that no director could ask me a question. Very important. No director of General Motors ever asked me a single question about any of this.
But that's incredible.
Now then, they voted to do it. I was shocked that they voted to do it. I then said, I want the document made public for a week so that the stockholders can react to it before it becomes final. They said, no, you have to accept the money immediately. I had about 2 minutes to make that decision. I decided to accept the money, put it in escrow until December the 15th, let the world know what management had done. Now then, a series of polls were run by Detroit newspapers and others. First poll that came out is 96% of the respondents said that management had made a mistake. Best poll they ever got said that 88% of them of the management had done the wrong thing. I did this to create a sea change in General Motors. I felt I could wait 20 years to have an opportunity like this to change the corporation. And so I did it. I have no regrets for doing it. I think I did the right thing.
From the standpoint of regrets, do you have some misgivings about, I don't think you need $700 million, about taking $700 million from a corporation that is closing plants, laying off thousands of workers who really have no place to go, who have given their lives to General Motors? Is there any conscience trouble for you on that?
Well, that's the first thing I said. That's the first thing I said publicly when I explained this transaction to the press, is that in good conscience, I couldn't take. Now, keep in mind, General Motors paid me for 80% of my holdings in cash 2 years earlier. This was the last 20%. You follow me? Mm-hmm. What just happened is the last 20%. So you're right, I didn't need the money. It really bothered me, and that's the first thing I said, because we have a policy, or not a policy, a practice in this country for blaming the problems of our big companies on the workers. And that's one thing I'd really love to talk to you about for a minute, if you'd like to.
Mr. Perot, before you get into that, and I appreciate your interest, now let me ask you one. We only have 3 minutes left. Do you think that if the automobile industry was as competitive as you believe it should be and can be, that we would have to have a quota on the import of Japanese automobiles?
No, if we would tap the full potential of the people in companies like General Motors, We'd have to have a quota so the Japanese could sell a few over here.
When is that point?
We've got the talent. We've got everything it takes.
When is that point going to be reached? You said you think there's been a turning of the tide at GM. When are we going to see that result?
Well, time will tell. Time will tell if they're just talking or if they're going to do something. But look at it here. I work on the assembly line in an American company, okay? I get blamed for everything that goes wrong. Do I get to design the product? No. Do I get to determine the capital expenditures? No. Do I get to design the plant that the product's built in? No. Do I get to design the assembly line? No. Now, do I even get to pick the tools I use to make the product? No. Isn't it incredible that I, the factory worker, get blamed for the absolute abysmal failure of leadership that has occurred at the top of our big company?
And you don't get the bonus.
And
you don't get the bonus if you're on the assembly line, but the big shot up in the corporate offices, he gets the bonus.
Well, there are fundamental things about managing people that go back for centuries. One of the first rules of war is feed the troops, then feed the officers. It's fundamental. There's a second rule of war, and that is don't shoot yourself in the foot and don't shoot your friends. You see a lot of that going on in U.S. industry, too.
Mr. Perot, we have less than a minute to go. Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Richard Darman created a lot of stir, particularly in Republican ranks, by talking about corpocracy. Boone Pickens, the oil man, says he can call a lot of companies and he won't find anybody in before 10 o'clock. Do you think they are right that the American executives are fat, lazy, living off the country clubs?
Yeah, there's nothing sinister here. It's true, but the way it happened is we won World War II. We became the supplier to the world. We determined, over several generations of managers, we decided that was our birthright. The world rebuilt itself. We now have true international competition. And the response to that is the playing field's not level. Their definition of a level playing field is one where you own the bat, the ball, the gloves, both teams, the stadium, and the lights. Now, as soon as they realize there's another team on the field, and as soon as they tap the full potential of those corporations and their people, we can compete. But we're going to have to radically change. We're going to have to stop managing and start leading. You can manage inventory. You got to lead and motivate people, and most of these guys don't even know what you're talking about when you bring that up.
We're out of time, Mr. Perot. I wish we had another half hour. Thank you very much. My partner and I will return in a moment with some comments.
Just when you need it most, Toyota introduces a roomy new kind of getaway car, the versatile new Toyota Corolla FX16. The all-new FX16 slips through traffic that snarls other cars. 16-valve quick, tires that stick, four-wheel disc equipped. The gutsy new Toyota FX16. What a way to get away from it all. Who could ask for anything more?
That cool, refreshing feeling of Wrigley's Spearmint Gum puts a sparkle in your eye, a spring in your step, and makes things lots of fun.
It's that little lift from Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. It's that little lift. Come on and get you some.
That clean, fresh taste Wrigley's Spearmint's got. That little lift that means a lot.
It's that little lift from Wrigley's Spearmint Gum.
Spud and I used to get in a lot of trouble around here. We helped serve at parties, worked on my bike, and Spud had a lot of accidents. But since my folks bought wear-dated gold label carpet, everything has been great. Because kids spatter drinks, oil and grease, even Spot can't spot this carpet. It's made with Monsanto's certified locked-in stain blocker. And it sure kept us out of the doghouse.
Wear-dated gold label carpet with locked-in stain blocker. It's tough and beautiful.
This message is for all those who enjoy curling up in a comfortable chair and outperforming the Dow Jones Industrials. One publication has the financial analysis, insights, and other resources to make your favorite pastime highly rewarding. It's called Barron's.
Subscribe to Barron's now and get 26 weeks for only $43 with a money-back guarantee. Call 800-257-1257. That's 800-257-1257.
H. Ross Perot. There, Bob, is one fascinating individual. No self-doubt in Mr. Perot. Here's a self-made man who's worth maybe $3 billion. And what does he say about automobiles, the Japanese? If we could do it the way it should be done, it's the Japanese who would have to put a quota on the export from here of American cars to Japan, not the other way around. I believe him.
You know, if General Motors think they shut up Ross Perot for that $700 million, they got a bum deal. Criticism, he says that's constructive criticism, but I thought there was still a little self-doubt that he is taking all that General Motors money and those people on the production line are out of work.
Well, on hostages, he was fascinating, Bob. As I said, he's had the best record of anybody in the world on getting people out of places like Iran, but clearly the arms deal, he did not understand what was going on when the Reagan administration approved all that shipment of arms to Iran to get Americans out of Beirut. He'll do something. He says we should do everything we could to get Americans out, but that was too much.
You know, a lot of the big business Republican corporate executives went bananas when Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Dorman talked about corpocracy. But Ross Perot agrees, and I think the White House would be better off listening to Ross Perot and turning off some of those fat cats. I'm Robert Novak.
And I'm Roland Evans.
If you would like to comment on this weekend's program, write to Evans and Novak, Cable News Network, 111 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20001.
Grandpa!
Becky, stay with Grandpa, okay? What's up, Mom?
Joe, look at this bill.
Wow, I thought Medicare took care of it all.
Most of it, honey, but not all. I'm just not prepared for this.
For those of us who are 65 or older, the sad fact is that Medicare does not cover all our medical bills. And that's why you should call today to get the facts about Secure Care, to help pay what Medicare doesn't. Look, if you end up in the hospital before Medicare pays 1 red cent, you pay $520. Stay in the hospital for 150 days, you pay $20,020. But with Secure Care 65, you don't pay 1 penny of those costs. Secure Care 65 pays them all and keeps on paying for 1 full year after Medicare stops. Helps pay your doctor bills, too. And now, for 1987, Secure Care has added brand new benefits, which make Secure Care even better. Secure Care now helps pay for a nurse at home after you're discharged from the hospital. You'll also get free membership in the Eye Care Plan of America, which gives you and every member of your household big discounts year-round on eyeglasses. I don't know any other plan that does all that. So if you or someone you love is 65 or older and on Medicare, call for this free information about Secure Care.
If you're 65 or older, call 1-800